calling all pie and tart and galette bakers. If you're looking for a healthier, more nutritious crust alternative for your next recipe, today's show is just for you. Using a new repertoire of grains, flours, and sweeteners, I'll share 3 exciting new recipes. A plum galette with cornmeal crust, a chocolate coconut pie, and a mushroom tart. All today on Martha Bakes. It may be an ingredient we all know, but this expert farmer has been able to focus his growing on reviving ancient grains that you might not know. Jack Algiere is joining us today to shed light on the nuances of cornmeal. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Martha.
Very nice to have you here.
Thank you.
I always learn so much from you. And tell us about this new corn. Look at this ear of corn.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Well, this is really a very old corn. Originally, it was probably Iroquois, came from New England, and it was exported to Italy hundreds of years ago. It still is the premier polenta corn in Italy. We call it autofile. 8 rows.
Oh, that's,
yeah.
Oh, I was trying to think, well, who's Otto?
Yeah, so the 8-row corn, and these were grown in New England for a long time also, not just in Italy. They generally can grow between 12 and 14 inches long.
Wow.
And what's really special about it is the really high protein that's in it. That's what makes the polenta so good.
These are the same?
The same kernels.
Oh.
The problem was it started to fall out of favor in Italy because as people exported the polenta to the US and around the world, they would take the germ out. And as you know...
Oh, which is the essential ingredient, really.
Yes, because it spoils the polenta. When it ships.
I see.
It's generally a trade-off between high yield or high protein. So the fact that they were just cutting out all that energy, they just went with higher yielding, lower protein corns.
Oh.
And so for the past decade, I've been collecting this and choosing individuals that are better and continue to improve the variety and try to carry on the legacy of this corn.
It's a very admirable pursuit, I would say. And it's such beautiful cornmeal. This is corn flour, I guess, that you ground, and that's the cornmeal.
This one is actually from a mill at the farm, and this one is from my home mill. I do a slightly coarser at home to make a more thick polenta, but this one makes all sorts of beautiful pastries.
Wow. What other grains are you growing?
Well, we grow a really special rye variety. It's actually what we call an American bread rye. It's a large seeded rye, which usually they're long and thin. It's a dark seed. It looks a lot like a wheat seed. Very tall plants, head high.
Oh, really?
They're beautifully high right now. They're gorgeous plants. And we also grow older varieties of barley, this really wonderful Scott Bear variety, which was one of the first Dutch varieties brought to the US. And then we grow a number of modern wheats. And these are varieties that are really high productivity, but also really great nutrition, which is something that has been kind of...
waning a little bit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, they've been holding on it for a while with modern varieties, and some of the new stuff coming out is really wonderful.
Oh, great. Well, the revival of ancient grains is important to all of us because it offers endless flavor to bakers. And we're finding that just adding a little bit of this or that really does change the texture, the flavor, and the healthiness of some of our baked goods.
Certainly.
So when you bake with the autofile, what's the difference?
I think the flavor and the scent, we can smell it from here. Generally, cornmeal has a tendency to be kind of flat and just be a filler in some ways.
This smells like you're in the best movie with the best popcorn with no butter on it.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It is
really
a
is
very
wonderful.
delectable smell. Just incredible. Oh, I can't wait to bake with it.
Look forward to that.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to talk to you about your experimentation in horticulture and in bringing back new old varieties that we can all use and profit by. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
For the novice baker, a galette, which is pie's free-form cousin, will give you the confidence you need before trying actual pies and tarts. For added crunch and flavor in the crust, I'm using cornmeal in this mouth-watering Plum Galette. And the crust is very easy to make, and use your trusted food processor, 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and we're adding 1/4 cup of this extraordinary cornmeal given to me by my friend Jack Algiere. So it's going to have a fabulous taste. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a tablespoon of granulated sugar, and that's basically the dry ingredients. Cold butter. Like all pie crusts, make it cold, bake it hot. Remember that. So everything should be cold. I'm just basically sifting the dry ingredients together by pulsing. Add your butter. And this is 1 stick of butter cut into small cubes. And this gets processed right into the dry ingredients by pulsing. And you want to leave a little bit of butter visible. I always say it should look like coarse oatmeal. And that there, it's pretty much that. And then we add 2 tablespoons of ice water mixed with 1 large egg yolk. So separate your egg yolk from the white. Save the white. I love to save it in a plastic container like this, and I just keep adding egg whites and writing on the cover what it is. So that can be used for angel food cake or something else. And 2 tablespoons of iced water. No ice cubes. If you get an ice cube in your pastry, it will make a wet spot. And that wet spot will make a hole. And you will not have a beautiful crust there. And so just pour this liquid down the feed tube while pulsing. That looks just right. Just starting to come together. And if you put it in your hand, it stops crumbling. That's exactly what we want. And this gets wrapped up in plastic wrap, and that will be your crust. And now, if you gather your pastry into this plastic wrap, make it into a flat disc, and then basically flatten it out and chill for at least an hour and up to overnight. Now for the filling, we have 1 1/4 pounds of plums. Your plums go into just a small amount of sugar, 1/4 of a cup of sugar, and also add a little bit of cornstarch. The cornstarch will thicken the juices of these juicy plums. That's 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Let them sit for a little while. Oh, and don't forget vanilla. Split the vanilla bean down its length and scrape with the flat side of the knife. Those are millions and millions of little vanilla bean seeds. And this goes right into your bowl with your plums. Stir these up. They smell very good. So now we're actually ready to roll out our galette crust. This one we want to be about 12 inches in diameter. A few little cracks. Now if you're making it very rustic, you can just leave the free-form edge. If you want it to be a little bit more formal, you can cut around the edge with a pastry wheel. But notice how easy it is to pick up if you roll it on your pin like this. And then how easy it is to unroll right on your parchment-covered baking sheet. There. And this is the crust for our galette. Put your plums right in the center. It would be a very good idea to have lots of those crusts in your freezer for summertime, because who knows when you're going to be at the farmer's market or even a good grocery store and find the perfect plums, so that you too can make a bottom crust galette. Use all that nice juice, and then make sure your hands are clean before you start to fold up the edge over the fruit. You can, as I say, do it in a rustic fashion like this. You can pleat it. You can fold it over nicely. Ah, this is so great. Rustic version. You can use a little bit of turbinado sugar on the top of the fruit. Dot with small pieces of butter on the fruit itself. That will flavor the juiciness of these beautiful plums. 1 or 2 tablespoons will do. And this will go right into the refrigerator to chill for approximately an hour before you put it into the oven. And here is our chilled version. And 1 large egg mixed with 1 teaspoon of water. This is your glaze. And just brush just on the pastry. Your oven is preheated to 375 degrees. And this will take approximately 35 minutes or so, or 40 minutes to bake at that temperature. A galette is such an easy version of a fruit pie. A little bit of that sugar on the crust. And there you have a spectacular galette ready to go into the oven. So the galette has been placed on a flat surface. I like it right on the parchment because it's the only way really that you can lift it off the tray, and then serve these lovely wedges with either whipped cream, creme fraiche, or even a scoop of buttermilk sorbet. Enjoy. Soft peaks of marshmallowy Italian meringue and silky chocolate ganache fill a graham cracker crust for a sinfully delicious chocolate coconut pie. So to make a crust, pulse in the bowl of a food processor 12 dairy-free graham crackers, 6½ ounces. Break them up a little bit before you try to grind them. It's hard to grind whole graham crackers. They grind up very nicely if you pulse a little bit. That's good. Now add the rest of the ingredients. Instead of butter, we are adding 1/4 cup of virgin coconut oil, which is pressed from raw coconut. It's often used as a butter substitute for people who are vegan or desirous of dairy-free baking. It's as rich as butter without the cholesterol, and it is as versatile as vegetable oil. With the coconut oil, we add 1/4 teaspoon of coarse salt, 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar, and 2 tablespoons of cold water. And that's pretty much it for the crust. Process this, and it should all kind of come together into a moist mass. So just transfer this to a 9-inch pie dish, and I prefer using a glass pie dish for this. It allows you to see the bottom of the crust while baking so that you know that it is done. So evenly spread this. I do this quickly with a rubber spatula like this, and then I press with the bottom of a cup measure. So now watch. This is the secret for getting it nice and flat and even. And notice how I'm pushing into the corners of the bottom, holding the top firm with my finger, and try to get it right up to the top of the rim. But look how pretty it is and how quick and easy. Right into a 350-degree oven, and we will pre-bake or blind bake, which means to bake a crust before you fill it. Bake for 12 to 14 minutes. So our crust has baked and cooled, and we're ready to fill it with a most delectable chocolate ganache and a meringue topping. 8 ounces of unsweetened chocolate. It's pure chocolate without any added sugar, and it is used pretty much exclusively for baking. You would not want to just chew on a piece of this because it's pretty bitter. And you have to chop the chocolate into small pieces, and in a saucepan, while you're chopping, heat a 14-ounce can of unsweetened coconut milk and pour this over the chocolate. The hot coconut milk carefully and gradually melts the pure bitter chocolate. You can stir, and it takes a while for all the lumps to disappear. We have a swap out right here. You can see how silken smooth it becomes. So I will use this one and start whipping 2 egg whites with a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. Do this on sort of low just to break up the egg whites, while you heat a half a cup of sugar with a quarter of a cup of water. You want to make a sugar syrup, and to keep it crystalline free, you can use a brush with a little bit of water just to go around the top of your pan. So turn this on high and bring it to a boil. Use a candy thermometer, and you'll want to heat it to softball temperature at 238 on a candy thermometer. And guess what? We're at softball stage. You can turn off the heat, remove your thermometer, and for easy cleanup, here's another hint. Just put the thermometer into some water to dissolve the sugar. And now slowly pour the sugar syrup right into the egg whites. Just whisk until it's nice and stiff and cool. Important to be cool before you add it to the chocolate. So here we are, stiff and silky. And so now transfer your chocolate into the meringue and fold it in. This lightens the chocolate, it increases its volume, it sweetens it, and makes a wonderful filling. And who would have guessed that you would get so much? And now just pour this into your crust. And this has to be refrigerated for at least an hour and preferably for up to a day. So I would suggest if you're having a dinner party tomorrow night, you make it in the morning or tonight for tomorrow night. That is such a beautiful pie. Get that right into the fridge and chill. So here is your chilled chocolate coconut pie. It does look so beautiful, and some chocolate curls could be scattered here and there. I think more the merrier. These are bittersweet chocolate, and they make very nice curls. And you could also use chocolate nibs, and these are the unsweetened bits of fermented cocoa bean. Consider them to be new chocolate chips. They're not sweet, but they are packed with intense chocolate flavor. In fact, for me, it's just a little too intense, but you might prefer them to the chocolate curls. But whichever you prefer, this is a spectacular dessert, and your guests will be surprised that it's dairy-free. Whole wheat flour and olive oil, rather than butter or shortening, form the crust of this delicious savory mushroom tart that has a flavor made all the more complex with the addition of tahini, a roasted sesame paste. So you're using 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose unbleached flour, and we're using 3/4 of a cup of whole wheat flour. Mix those together with 1 teaspoon of salt. And remember, salt isn't so much to make things salty, but salt is added to bring out all the flavors. And into this, 3 tablespoons of olive oil. So this is a very different kind of crust. And use a rubber scraper to stir. And their secret ingredient, 1/4 of a cup of tahini. Now, tahini comes from the Arabic word tahana, meaning to grind. And this is a protein-packed condiment, which is made out of ground up sesame seeds. It's very good, and we need 3 tablespoons of ice water without any ice. So 3 tablespoons just sprinkled over the dry ingredients. This is great. So now just put this out on a piece of parchment paper and try to gather it into a single mass. And you can roll it between 2 pieces of parchment paper. We want it to fit into our 9-inch removable bottom tart pan. So now you can roll this up on your rolling pin. And like all my crusts, I either pull off the excess with my thumb, pressing into the fluting of the ring, or you can take your rolling pin and roll right across the top. Now, before you put it in your preheated 425-degree oven, dock it, meaning you're adding little holes which will prevent the crust from erupting during baking. And you get a nice flat crust out of this. Bake the crust at 425 for 35 to 40 minutes. Our crust came out beautifully. Look how great it looks. It's a little bit smaller than the pan. It does shrink a little bit. I have my oil heating. Add a half a cup of finely minced shallots and 1 clove of garlic, finely minced. We just want to sweat them a little bit. These are called aromatics. Beautiful. With a half a teaspoon of salt and a little bit of red pepper flakes. Just a little. Stir those around just until the shallots are translucent. So now the mushrooms. We have 1 pound of wild mushrooms. Cremini, oyster mushrooms. If you can find portobello, that would be nice. Add them to the pot. And continue to stir them and cook until tender and golden brown. We have a swap out, so after 8 to 10 minutes, we're going to add 2 eggs, slightly beaten, 1/4 cup of parsley, finely chopped. I like to use just the leaves of the Italian parsley for this. So beautiful. And 3/4 cup of Gruyere cheese, grated. So this all gets added to the mushrooms. And your Gruyere. And what a simple, nice filling. And this goes right into your crust. Layer your mixture right in the crust. How special this is. This is a wonderful lunch dish. It is a fantastic first course for a dinner of a leg of lamb or a fish. And it could also be a vegetable course. So there. Now this goes onto a rimmed baking sheet. Put it right back into the oven, 350 degrees, 30 to 35 minutes. Well, here's the tart. Still slightly warm. Perfect temperature for serving. Be careful not to let the ring burn your arm. That has happened. Doesn't that look good? And you can garnish with pretty parsley leaves. The green looks beautiful on this tart. And it also adds a nice flavor. There, I think that's enough. And then the salad. Oh, just a wonderful mixed green salad, fresh garden lettuces with a sherry vinaigrette. And this should be dressed right before serving. And the dressing does take better on the salad if the salad is not wet. So use your salad spinner, and let's see how this cuts. And a generous size for a luncheon course. Look how great. A fresh green salad, a glass of white wine, a wedge of mushroom tart. What could be better for a lunch shared with friends? Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time on Martha Bakes.
When I make polenta at home, I always have leftovers. So I pour it into a sheet pan, refrigerate it overnight. In the morning, I cut small squares, put it into sizzling butter, sear it for a short time until nice and crisp. We can plate this. A light pat of butter across the top. I like to add maple syrup on this. Better than waffles or pancakes.